finally for some real, tangible news to share.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, second episode this 5th of June 2023, and this is yours truly, Clarissa T. A bit of a news. The U.S. Embassy Manila has hiked up the non-immigrant visa fee for Filipinos who will be paying on the 17th of June 2023. The new fee is from $160 to $180. The good news, however, is that the approved visa is good for 10 years automatically, which a breakdown of the fee would be $18 per year of validity, so not bad. I want to read from a paragraph of the announcement straight from the website of U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. April 11th, 2023. The U.S. Department of State has increased certain non-immigrant visa (NIV) application processing fees globally. These fees increases are effective as of May 30th, 2023. So, when the announcement was first released, it was April 11th, 2023. And probably there are some updates to this because of the date, June 17th, 2023, the effective implementation of the hike. The application, I want to continue with the reading of the paragraph. The application fee for visitor visas for business or tourism, B1, B2s, and other non-petition based NIVs such as student and exchange visitor visas has increased from $160 to $185. The application fee for certain petition-based non-immigrant visas for temporary workers, that's MOA, type H, L, O, P, Q, and R categories has increased from $190 to $205. That will be the amount covering my own application. The application fee for a treaty trader, treaty investor, and treaty applicant in a specialty occupation, E category, has increased from $205 to $315. So that's the highest of the bracket. And that's it. I just want to share this information to whoever are affected by this reminder. Now, for today's podcast, this is about what happened in a residential address on the 14th of August 2019 and its relevance at this date or in the coming dates starting from June 5th, 2023. That's the date today. And how it happened that it became a lesson learned for me, wherein the nuances and the backlog of updates within the family had to be postponed because of the nuances of the legal cases I found myself. It's going to take time, and the backlog has piled up that it would be somehow difficult for me to get them abreast of what's happening. So, and it's a lesson learned when I try to bring these matters to my brother's house, and he has his own obligations and responsibilities, and they tend to overlap and cause trouble because, when you act on incomplete information, that tends to happen. And up to now, I regret how how things had turned out. clearly, this incident will point out to how my family and relatives are not, or they do not know the exact details of where the duality of the personality and the parallel universe originated. I have coined these phrases to describe the information that I am sharing and the pieces of conversation, snatches of conversation that don't seem to align with each other. They seem to be happening to two different Clarissas, to two different persons, diba? And that is awkward at the very least and problematic when it reaches like the justice system and the judiciary. So this incident happened around the time I stopped attending the Church Global Missionary Fellowship, or GMF, which used to be Lucena Bible Church. Coincidence or relevant timing? This would be further discussed in the coming days. This is also where the question of my daughter came from, diba? I differentiate the spending cash and the assets, diba? Cash in bank, which can be subject of court ruling or court order. So spending cash is definitely different in its treatment in accounting and financial documents. They are so different. But for us within the family, we tend to have that mixed up. So I think I would be forgiven somehow for sparing my family the worst of it, because I would rather deal with it directly with the persons concerned. So, but anyway, going back to Jacqueline's question to me, what if I lose money at the end of the inquiries or at the end of the consolidation processes, because it will turn out that the assets under my name are not legitimately mine. The technical problem would somehow be resolved, and the final verdict would be they were put under my accounts by mistake. So, but no matter how unpleasant and how it will suck to lose something that I've never had. Even the bragging right, just the bragging right will be taken away from me, but it's the reality. And somehow we will all be better for it when the debits and the credits, when the accounting has finally settled, even if it will mean that we would be losing rights to certain assets. But yeah, that's life. So if we lose out, like somehow I know myself to be Clarissa, an ordinary person, but the assets, the endowments, the grants, the prize money really belong to a commendable Clarissa, and that I'm just a mistaken identity. But it's better to not live within the shadow of that highly admirable Clarissa, and just be content with who I am, because the stature of such a Clarissa talaga Garcia, whose altruistic deeds are commendable and whose credentials are worthy of global recognition, is not in keeping with someone who is saving up to be able to pay for just the computer repair, diba? Whose patience I have, I'm already taxing, whose patience is about to end because I just can't seem to finish with the paperwork for my own finances, diba? For my own oh gosh, this coffee is so good. And And so the discrepancies are glaring, but you have to admit they're so interesting. You know, for me, the point of interest of being mistaken to be someone of a grand persona, you know, to have a namesake who is so grand, so known, and so admired, if I may say so, it's kind of giving me thrill. I'm tickled by it. You know, for a person who can be known with altruistic accomplishments in the past tense. And the altruism is not spelled AUTISTIC, diba? That gives me hope. And at the moment, although I'm not the former, you know, the grandeur persona of Clarissa, I'm just the latter, who will make a partial payment to my friend because the paperwork for settlements and collections are not getting done in time. So be that as it may, I would be somehow be looking forward for the correction of errors. As it is, I have to prioritize with my multiple duties and responsibilities, which are not altruistic. But it's also not AUTISTIC. So it came to pass that on the eve of Cherry Boy's birthday, Bokal, Cherry talaga is the board member because it's like an equivalent to a legislative jurisdiction of the province, for the province. If it's within the city, it's the city council, but if it's within the provinces, that would be the first district, second district. The province has been divided into 4 districts. And for the first district, one of the representatives is my brother, Bokal Jerry talaga. So on his birthday is August 15th. And on that year, it happened on the 14th of 2019, August. So mid-morning around 10 a.m., if my recollection of the time is still accurate without checking the actual documents from the police blotter. Anyway, the 2 agents came by to our house and I was not there. I was about to bring, I was bringing Jewel to my brother's house, which is a subdivision adjacent to Pleasantville. And someone can look after her for a few hours because I was having a problem with the collection and I was, you know, the notices were piling up and I really needed to sort out my finances and I need to work on my own communication to clients and other options on how best to settle the accounts. My youngest daughter is Juana May. That's Jewel's mom, making Jewel my granddaughter. She just resigned from her position because she just gave birth, and with 2 kids, it would be hard for her to continue working in Manila with the 2 kids. So Juanito was around 2 months old when it happened. So his house is located at the farthest end of a street in a corner, tucked neatly before the end of the subdivision next to the cliff and the river. And you know, the last street of the subdivision. So he has a housekeeper he had a housekeeper then who could look out for Jewel, while the other help that we hired was in Pleasantville to look after the 2-month-old Juanito. I had to finish up the work, so yeah, we were there. And the two agents knew where my brother's house, which was what struck me even then, because it wasn't long when I arrived at Jerry Boy's house when they had followed me. And it turned out that our new nanny, the helper, had told them that I was in my brother's house, but my problem then and now was that she's not from Lucena City, and she's not familiar with the inner streets, with the newly constructed new developments, diba? It was a long time since she came to stay here in Lucena City, so she would not be in any position to give direction to the two agents, and yet they were able to follow me without problem, even with the location of my brother's house. And you know, our new nanny was the only one that these two agents had spoken with, supposedly. She told them that I was at my brother's house with a car. The advanced knowledge of their personal knowledge will indicate the intents and how they knew exactly they needed to speak with and who are the people they would give their peace of mind. They didn't care that my brother is an elected government official then and now. You know, it's even, you know, after the encounter at my brother's house, and I told them, you know, for us to go back to Pleasantville, where I had the paperwork, where I could explain along with the documents, rather than, you know, bring the scandalous confrontation in my brother's house, which has nothing to do with our transaction. But instead of going straight to the house, I went to the police headquarters, Lucena PNP, because I wanted to put on record that my car was being foreclosed, and that I want to put on the record that as the CEO of Talaga Information and Business Consultancy, my end of the contract for my clients were not being fulfilled, and that it was the beginning of my own inquiry whether there was an existing contract in the first place. So that was my intention, to record. I was willing to give my car, but after sorting out my own culpability, my own responsibility, that it's not happening because I've been totally remiss in my obligations and responsibilities, because as I have been a valid and eligible party to that chattel mortgage contract, that same legitimacy I bring to other contracts wherein I represent the company and this public platform. So that afternoon, I was, so I realized that they have this bottomless source of confidence and impunity, because even at the police station, I could not proceed accordingly to how I just wanted to make a report, and that I was confronted with how the contract was being violated by me going to by refusing to give my car, by refusing to, to give in And then when we came home, the more heated part of the confrontation had happened. So in spite of going to the police headquarters, the hostility and the threats continued. So I would say that, the source of confidence and impunity are truly bottomless. So they must be coming from a place of power. That for some people, for these agents who do not come from Quezon province, they said they have to stay at a lodging house if they would not finish with the transaction, because they could not go back to Bulacan or to Metro Manila without finishing the task that their superiors, their bosses, had laid out for them. So they were all throughout. They were in contact with their superiors over the phone. So that afternoon, after promising them that I would talk to my brother and I would ask favor if I could borrow the money for the arrears so that they do not need to take my car, even temporarily, until I sort out the problems. So after the first forceful and threatening confrontation with me in the morning, and the police report also around lunchtime, after lunch, these two agents went to my brother's house, to Jerry Boy's house instead, and they waited for him. So what were they doing there? The person with whom they have a direct relationship on account of a chattel mortgage is me. It was me. It is me. And they knew I was at home in Pleasantville. That's our registered address. Yes, I told them that I will try to borrow money from my brother to pay the arrears while I settle with clients of mine about my collection. So if they could wait a bit. But I have no business going directly to my brother and obliging him and threatening his personal space by standing on the right to issue demands and exact payments in such a manner. An elected official can have enemies of his own who can resort to violence. Do I need to elaborate on the most recent illustration of this point, subject of Senate inquiry? The bottomless confidence and impunity of these non-Quezon province residents who came all the way from Bulacan and Metro Manila, it was truly alarming, especially to us who are no strangers to the due processes of finance, delinquency, and foreclosures. And since they introduced themselves to be part of credit management and to be part of finance companies, I would presume that they too know what the proper procedures are. And these details are relevant in the legal cases that had been recommended by the National Action Center of the Philippine Department of Justice. And so with that, any untoward incident would come from incomplete information that I was not able to convey on my own. And when I had taken this matter for mediation at the Lucena PNP, I was not assisted in the way that could have abbreviated the continuing potentially violent confrontation. So in determining the elements of the cases and other factors that can affect the legal cases, the stipulation as pre-trial requirements, it's bound to be interesting. The process of discovery is also going to be, there are so many wild cards in this discovery, wherein as I represent my own interest as representative of my own party of interest, diba? I can ask, for instance, the identities of the lawyer for the other party. So many things can happen along the way, and it's going to be the tricky part of the lack of knowledge as good faith defense can be stretched. And good thing for myself, I have my own due diligences, if that's the plural of the due diligence, singular form and plural form. Well, anyway, it's going to be interesting, and what will be the extent that I can freely impart with through these podcasts, through these platforms, because they are truly sources of lessons and education, information, actionable information for us because of real cases. And if they're going to be part of a legal case, somehow the details will be the public domain, because public documents can be entered as admissible evidence for one party or the other. So there's a lot awaiting you. Please download this and share the information, because it's going to be real-time updates from here on. Bye. This is yours truly, Clarissa T.
So if I'm real, and if my documents are truly registered in the local regulatory offices, then my hold over this runaway, aka or also known as Clarissa, is truly illegal.